Hey folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from for this new episode of The Rise Up Radio. And on this episode, we have with us Lavinia Mehedintu. Lavinia, very, very warm welcome to you on The Rise Up Radio today.
Thank you for having me.
So, folks, Lavinia is the co-founder and learning architect at Offbeat, and they're tracking transformations in learning and development industry towards a more technologically led yet people-centric paradigm for professionals globally. So, Lavinia, why don't you give us a brief about your journey and the work that you're doing currently?
Of course, happy to. So I've been in the people HR space for about 13 years now, and at some point I moved to L&D. I think I always knew that I'm gonna do that because I love learning so much. And I've been in L&D, designing programs for others and trainings and mentorship programs, leadership development programs, whatever you can think of.
Hmm.
And then, at some point, I started posting on LinkedIn, and I guess people appreciated my posts. They asked for a newsletter, so we opened the newsletter, and then we started to grow more and more. And basically, what we're doing at the moment is just supporting other L&Ds in their journeys and in becoming more impactful, in understanding what the future might hold for us and also preparing for that future as best as we can because
Hmm.
we can only assume what might
Absolutely.
come, but it's
Absolutely.
best than not preparing at all,
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Now, since you talk of technology and the biggest shift in technology right now is AI. And folks, in this conversation with Lavinia today, we are going to focus on how is AI fundamentally reshaping L&D across three different dimensions. One is how are L&D teams internally using AI, more importantly, beyond just content creation. Second would be how are they helping organization to adopt AI into their workflows? And finally, what are the core changes in the L&D space happening as AI is becoming commonplace? So, Lavinia, as before we jump into this three-dimensional paradigm, before launching your venture, you navigated the L&D landscape as a practitioner yourself, right? What specific challenges or unmet needs did you feel that the current solutions or systems were not solving for, and you thought, there has to be a better way to do this?
um so many honestly. I feel like we've evolved quite a lot ever since I was an internal L&D, but
When was that,
just
by the way? Just for context, which year was that, and
yes,
then?
so
Yeah.
I left my previous company in 2022. So
Okay.
it would be 4 years ago.
And
Yeah.
that is the AI era right after that. Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. AI wasn't such a big thing back
Right.
then. But there were quite a few challenges that we had that we couldn't solve, not just with the current technology, but in general with the current solution. So one of those was knowledge documentation and knowledge sharing within the
Mm,
company. Like we already knew that we have a lot of knowledge,
mm,
but documenting it was a challenge,
mm.
first of all, but then also disseminating that knowledge within the organization was another challenge. So we had to rely on the traditional practices like training, for example, or all
Yeah.
sorts of synchronous sessions to make sure we
Yeah.
disseminate that information. But those weren't always, just in time when people
Correct.
needed it. They couldn't, maybe ask all the questions they've had and so on and so forth. So that was definitely a big, big challenge.
Mm, mm,
Another challenge we had was anything related to engagement, let's say,
mm.
how people engage with learning,
Yeah.
and how they perceive, maybe, let me correct that. I would say that perception about learning was a big
Yeah.
challenge because
Yeah.
I think traditionally people were used to the idea of learning in a classroom. So
Correct.
they kind of took that with them within the workplace,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
were expecting us to deliver upon that expectation without, understanding maybe or reflecting upon the idea that learning is so much more and that
Mm,
learning happens daily on the job, when you
Correct.
talk to colleagues, experiment, and so on. So I do feel like these two
Hmm.
were some of the biggest that we've
Right.
had, but I can talk for ages about this.
No, absolutely. And in a way, if you see, right, both of these are interconnected to a very large degree. Because a lot of times what happens is that, my perception about learning might not be great if it is not solving my current challenges or current problems just in time.
Yeah.
And if the learning cannot be solving my current challenges in the time of need when I need it, then it basically becomes like an extra task that I don't want to go through. I think
Yes.
that is what has plagued the entire, I would not say the industry, but more about the thought process of how learning has been perceived, which is, can it be contextualized and personalized to an individual? It can be, but it becomes very expensive to do that because for each and every individual, you need to do that. And now we have more tools than what we had earlier. I think that's one of the biggest differences that are you seeing, had these tools been available back then, it would have been much easier to solve these bigger challenges at that time.
Yes, yes, especially the first one. I would definitely say so. And we're seeing this now, especially in the past year. I feel like 2025 was like the first year when L&Ds and organizations in general have started using AI for more than just content creation,
Right.
as you were saying earlier. So definitely that's one big help for organizations. I would say that the other one is more related to mindset and how we grew up in the educational system, and I do feel like that one is way more challenging. But what I want to stress is that people's perception of learning is challenged right now because they realize that with the growth of AI and everything that's happening, quite a few of the skills that we've had in the past are
Right.
are no longer
Are no
needed. So
longer
we
relevant. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, 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 and now we need to learn
And if we
all
don't
the
upscale,
time.
then we're gonna become irrelevant very, very soon. So yeah, people are
Yeah,
realizing more and more.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more strategically, Lavinia. Did you also feel that there was always a strategic disconnect back in the past where, what L&D was trying to solve for and what the company's strategic direction was? At least in my experience, I've found out that a lot of organizations were doing L&D initiatives as a checkbox activity rather than to look at what the organization needed strategically, and are we boosting those organizational strategic objectives or not with the learning programs and initiatives that we have brought in. And a lot of times, because of that disconnect, ROI becomes very difficult to demonstrate, budget becomes tighter, executives become more and more stringent on L&D budgets, and so on and so forth. So how was your experience on that direction?
Oh, so many thoughts. I want to start from this idea of, okay, so the company has a strategy and there's an L&D department. You basically need to figure out how you tie any of the solutions that you deliver to deliver that strategy, right?
Yeah.
One of the main challenges that I'm hearing, and I've felt it myself, and I've been hearing from the community, is that things are changing so quickly right now that companies find it hard to articulate what
Yeah.
the strategy is, what the goals are, and even if they do so, sometimes they change
Change so
so
rapidly.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's not just an L&D problem. I think
Hmm.
it's a general problem
Hmm.
that we haven't found a model to adopt that's more agile so that every department in the company can basically take whatever
Yeah.
goals or whatever
Yeah.
we're planning to do and deploy those within their departments, right? So that's a really important thing to stress out because I feel like there's a lot of shaming somehow on the L&D community
I get
that
that.
we don't align whatever we do to our company's goals, but it's I don't think it's just our
It's not
fault,
only
right?
an L&D problem, you're saying.
Exactly, exactly. But then, of course, another thing that I've been hearing quite a lot is that it's really hard actually to quantify,
Hmm.
to make sure that you have that company goal and
Yeah.
then that L&D goal it has a really clear link to it. That's not easy,
That
and it
attribution
requires
is not
time.
easy to establish a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
I know.
And it does require time,
Yeah.
which is something that L&Ds have rarely been given. They work, and we've worked very, basically just closing quick
Correct.
loops and fighting fires, and yeah, just to identify the problem that you're trying to
And when
solve.
you combine it with the
Fairly
other
fast.
problems that you were mentioning earlier, which is, the learners don't engage themselves or they don't pay enough attention to L&D, then
Yep.
it does not even translate into behaviors. So it becomes
Yeah.
like a, recursive cycle that feeds into each other,
Exactly,
isn't it?
exactly. And that's exactly what's been happening. So, we don't define the problems.
So
We don't have the time to
how do
define the
we break the
problems
cycle,
very well.
Lavinia? As per you, how can the cycle be broken? What's the starting
Uh,
point?
that's a really tough question, and I'm not sure I have the answer. But I think that's one point to start, making sure that we're not trying to solve everything. That's
Yeah,
another thing that we've been trying in L&D.
right.
Please everyone and solve everything.
Correct. Correct.
I feel like we need to get used to saying no, and then the
Yeah.
business needs to get used to hearing
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
understanding why we're saying no,
Mm, mm.
because some of the problems they're trying to solve are not solved with L&D
Correct.
solutions.
Correct.
They're procedural, they
Correct.
they are related to tech and so on. So we
Correct.
we we need to be more courageous in saying no and defining what we
I
can
agree with you.
or and cannot
Yeah,
do.
I agree with you. Because a lot of times, when things are not solvable, why don't we train people? And that might
Mhm.
solve the problem. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's not the problem always. Cool.
Yeah. And I would add something else here because I do feel like L&D has been used quite a lot as an engagement tool within
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
Like people are demotivated, let's give them some training, but we do need to be very clear on the fact that that's
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
short-term solution. And even if we use some sort of learning solutions to this engagement problem, first of all, track your data, see if anything
Correct.
happens, because
Correct.
in my experience, it's again a very short-term solution. After a week or two,
I
people
totally
forget
agree with you.
that
I
you.
mean, it's not even tactical, forget strategic nature of using
Yeah,
L&D as an engagement tool altogether. Yeah, that
yeah,
basically is done when you don't have any ideas, when you're out of ideas in terms of how to, or you don't want to tackle the core problem, which are cultural, right? So I
exactly.
think
Yeah,
that's where it becomes
yeah.
cool. So let's move on to the three layers of transformation and let's talk more about AI. I think this session is more and more about AI. So why don't we start with the first dimension, which is how are you seeing right now L&D teams leveraging AI? And you know what? I think content creation is a very, very obvious use case, which has been in the view for the last 2, 3 years now. So that's pretty obvious. But beyond that,
Mhm.
what are some of the interesting use cases that you are witnessing out in the industry where L&D teams are either starting to experiment or adopting very rapidly?
Yeah. I'm very happy that we're not talking about content creation when it comes to AI, to be honest. But I'm starting to see more and more use cases that are about enhancement. So there's some type of work that we're doing. How can we add AI to improve that, to make it quicker, to make it better, and so on and so forth? And to this point, there are some use cases where people are building GPTs or gems or whatever you want to call them. Um, and again, I'm just trying to think of concrete examples. Let's say that L&Ds need to support their SMEs
Yeah.
in creating better training, better resources, and so on and so forth, right? And I've seen not one, but many L&D professionals building these GPTs on data that's related to how do you design better
Hmm.
learning
Hmm.
experiences,
Hmm.
and sharing that GPT with the stakeholder, right? And
Yeah.
they can build better learning because they have access to this
Yeah.
GPT. So this is one example. The use of, again, GPTs, gems, depending on what models are you using. And then the other one that I'm more excited about is actually I have two more, and I'm equally excited about both. The first one is about automation, even up to agentic. I feel
Okay.
like there's a lot of space there to
Yep.
automate the manual work that
Yep.
L&Ds have been doing. So we
Hmm.
have more time for, the human part
Yep.
of our role. And to give you an example here, I know of a company of an L&D, and they were doing all the training scheduling manually, which was a
Hmm.
mess,
Hmm.
creating forms, sending those to people, seeing who joined, who didn't, sending calendar invites, and like all that process
Yep.
that we're all used to. And they were using the Google Suite, so he basically used Google Script to automate that entire process
Right.
and just relieve some of his team from the manual work. So
Hmm.
that's one use case that's very interesting.
Hmm.
And of course, the other use case, which is starting to be more and more common, but I don't think it's that well done just yet, which is personalizing learning.
Hmm.
And when I say personalizing learning, it can be anything from having a huge like a large database of
Hmm.
knowledge
Hmm.
regarding something.
Yep.
And for example, during the onboarding, instead of synchronously bringing people in to find information about the company, they can just
Right.
access some sort of coaching bot, onboarding bot, call
Yeah.
it whatever
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want, that what it does, it creates the learning experience depending on how the learner interacts with the model, right? It
Hmm.
can be,
Hmm.
some people might want to read, some people might want to watch videos, some people might
Right.
want to be quizzed, and so on and so forth. So that's another use case I'm excited about.
Interesting. Interesting. I think this last use case comes under the overarching umbrella of AI coaching because I think
Mhm.
that what encapsulates personalization at scale for each and every individual to be able to understand what do they need and then provide that support in their preferred manner right there. Right.
Mhm.
Are you also looking at some use cases which are helping at more strategic level, Lavinia? Agents which are helping L&D strategy, design, creation, understanding the company's objectives, then identifying the competencies that are required, and then making that flow.
Mhm.
Because this process used to take months and months in organization
Yeah,
and
yeah.
can be now done in a very smart manner with agents, which are specifically designed for learning and development programs primarily.
I haven't seen that many use
Oh,
cases
you haven't?
just yet.
Okay. Okay.
No, no. I feel like we're just starting to scratch the surface on enhancement and automation
Yeah.
and maybe like a bit of agentic, but I don't feel like we're there yet with the industry. But if
Is it
anyone
more from
listens
the
to
supply side
this,
or demand side,
sorry.
Lavinia? Is it more from the demand side or supply side? Do you think that L&D teams are not ready yet for adoption, or the supply does not exist yet? That solutions are not there out in the market.
I think it's both. I
It's
think
both.
I think organizations might need this, but maybe they're not aware just yet.
Yeah.
And technology is there in some cases. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not perfect, but it's starting to
Yeah.
be there. And us in L&D, we haven't picked it up quite just yet. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. Let's move on to the second layer now, right? How are you seeing L&D teams supporting AI adoption across the organization, right? And I know that it's not L&D teams' entire responsibility to be able to
Mhm.
make AI adoption available or mandated across the organization. But what's the role that L&D teams are starting to play in terms of AI adoption in organizations right now?
Yeah, I think there are a few principles that are quite general across everything I've heard. The first one is supporting peer learning, which is one of my favorite things. Like instead of bringing external vendors, for example,
Yeah.
the L&D team kind of becoming the liaison between the people that are starting to experiment with AI and have had some results, and everyone else who's maybe a bit shy
Yeah.
to try it on. And basically L&D teams are putting a spotlight in all sorts of sessions and
Yeah.
hackathons, promptathons, whatever they are, so that people can share what they're doing, right? So
Mhm.
that's one bit. The other bit is creating this safe space for experimentation in all sorts of sessions where people can just come in and try things out with, high psychological safety and low expectations because it's just a learning environment.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've seen quite a lot and I've heard quite a lot from people is making sure that you create strong partnerships with the IT or tech
Mhm.
department in the company, as well as legal and
Mhm.
security and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. So like these two partnerships are very important to make
Yeah.
sure not just that people use the different AI stacks that
Right.
companies have, but also that they use them in in a way that takes security and privacy
Correct.
into
Absolutely.
account, right?
Absolutely.
um I have to say one of the challenges that we've had in supporting AI adoption is the fact that AI is such a particular technology that it can truly be helpful when
Mhm.
it's customized for you and your role.
Correct.
Generally, in L&D, we're used to talking to large, broad audiences. But
Yeah.
in this case, I mean, it helps to, have some company sessions about prompting and about
But
how
that
AI
remains at a
can
very
help.
high level, 50,000 feet level, right?
Yeah,
And in those sessions, you again fall back into the old problems that you face, which is,
yeah,
hey, why should I even care, right? I mean, okay,
yeah.
fine, it's good to know, but how is it
Hmm.
solving my problems right now? I think
Exactly.
this becomes one of the biggest challenges, when you start defining the ideal manner in which L&D can support. Probably one of the biggest ways would be become a very strong L&D, a very strong AI proponent yourself, which is using AI tools yourself to be able to show
Yes.
use cases that, hey, this is how we are solving our use cases.
Mhm.
Can we now start identifying specific tools that can solve your use cases as well, which could be, in partnership with different functional teams, like you said, because it is very personalized,
Yeah, yeah,
solutions that you might have to bring a lot of times.
yeah, yeah. That's true.
Cool. Okay, so what's the resistance? And I know, there is a resistance, right? So when you talk of this change that I just described, uh, there's a lot of mindset shift that needs to happen. And is there a resistance to change or is there not?
I think so, yes, but I wouldn't blame people in L&D or otherwise. I think it's normal to be fearful
True.
about what AI can do to different roles, So there is for sure resistance. But I'm not sure if it helps,
Mm.
I think we need to be conscious and build whatever we build with the idea, what the impact might be from
Yeah.
different angles, but I think there's another reason why there's resistance, and that is because in L&D specifically, the question is if AI actually can do all the jobs that we have been doing so far,
Mm.
what are we going to
What are we
do
going to
next?
do?
And there is a lack of I don't know, a vision of
Yeah.
what L&D can do in the future
Mm.
because there's so much that we can do
Correct.
actually. I'm happy that we won't be doing so many of the things that we've been doing so far, but I think you need to be courageous and to look at that future in a
So
positive.
I think it's the same old problem, right? It's basically disrupting yourself before you get disrupted. So it's
Yeah.
time to start writing your own different JDs so that you can start taking different roles because your existing a big chunk of your existing work is gonna get automated very very
Yeah.
soon, if not
Yeah.
already automated, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more about cannibalizing yourself in a way that, hey, how can we redefine our roles to be able to look at and become more strategic, more up the value chain instead of being the executors. How can we become more strategic? I think yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's very well said. Cool. So let's talk about the third layer of the question, right? So what will change because of AI? If you were to start painting an L&D picture for the future, how would that change? How would learning change more and more rapidly in the coming years?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have many thoughts here. I will just share two of
Hmm.
them. One of them is that the way that people gather to learn will change.
Hmm.
So far, we've been focusing quite a lot on content, which is
Yeah.
no longer the need that people
Yeah.
have because they can go on, ChatGPT, Gemini,
There's
whatever
tons
they
and
use
tons of
to
content
get
already. Yeah. Yeah.
content. So the question is, why are we meeting? And
Yeah.
I found the answer in experience design that talks about connection between people so that they can learn from each other and create meaning together,
Yeah.
sense making and so on and so forth. So I think that's one thing that will change, and we will need to change how we design,
Hmm.
how we gather people. And the other thing that needs to change is the fact that AI alone won't change 100% how people learn.
Yeah.
There are so many other blockers to
Hmm.
why people don't learn
Hmm.
within a company.
Hmm.
So I think that L&D's role will become to identify those blockers that might not have any connection to what
To
we've been
any
doing
at
so
all. Yeah.
far,
Correct.
yeah, and find solutions for these problems. And this role is a bit closer to organizational development, for
Right.
example.
Right. So it becomes more of an actual facilitator than what facilitators used to be earlier, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. I loved your take on the last one, Lavinia. Thank you for that. So, well, if L&D leaders are listening to this, and obviously they would be listening to it, and they must be feeling overwhelmed, right? So let's take out all the noise. Let's say what are the two different things or three different things that they should start doing coming Monday?
One, join a community. Join an L&D community wherever you are in the world. There are so many global L&D communities. Just do that. Expose yourself to as much information as possible, and
Spot
don't
on.
even bother yourself in making meaning of it right away. Just let it sink and let all that information come in. That's one. The other one is experiment. Like
Hmm.
for real, just create small experiments for yourself.
Yeah.
Go into ChatGPT, the free version, and try doing something different than you've been doing so far. Go ahead and play with Lovable, play with
Yeah.
different AI tools. Just do small things that are different than what you've been doing so far. I think like these two things are just the best that you could do.
Awesome. I think being courageous and trying out new things never hurts. I think
Mhm.
you're only going to learn. And as we said, if you are going to get disrupted, why don't you disrupt yourself first before you get disrupted by others?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, Lavinia. This was a fun chat. I think I had a blast talking to you and learned so much. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us and our audience today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
Well, there you have it, folks. This was Lavinia Mehedintu, and feel free to connect with her. She's very easily connectable on LinkedIn and join a community. But I'll see you in the new episode of the Rise Up Radio. But till then, you folks take care and be safe. Bye bye.